Have you had a moment to say, these are my final words? Jesus knew he did not have long with the disciples. What did they need to hear, he must have thought. I've told them so much already. I've tried to give them every instruction. I've tried to warn them about what was coming. I've tried to prepare them with all the equipment that they need for when I'll be gone. I've just got a few moments. What will I say? So he talks about tending sheep, feeding sheep, feeding his lambs. Now, I could be wrong, but it didn't look like there were any sheep near the Sea of Tiberias. And I didn't see any tending going on. Certainly not a sheep, and not even a fish. In fact, the disciples were tending an empty net. So we must wonder, where were they? Why is the task so difficult for Jesus in these final moments? How will he rein them in quickly? And what were they truly thinking? There's a story about a mother who was making pancakes for her sons. Perhaps you found yourself making pancakes for more than one child in your life. And her oldest son, Kevin, was 5 years old. Her youngest son, Ryan, was 3. And they're at the table waiting for their pancakes and fighting, of course, over who will get the first one. Because 2 pancakes can never come off the griddle at the same time. So who is going to get the first pancake? And when they're fighting, their mother thinks, well, maybe this is a good opportunity for a moral lesson. So she says, if Jesus were here, he would say, let my brother have the first pancake. I'll wait. So the boys thought about this for just a moment, and Kevin, the older one, quickly chimed in and said, that's a great idea. Ryan, you be Jesus. After all this time, Jesus has died, has been resurrected, and the disciples are wondering, who's going to be Jesus? If Jesus is going to lead, who's going to be Jesus? It's hard enough for Jesus to be Jesus, and it was hard enough for us to follow Jesus. Now somebody's going to be kind of sort of like Jesus because he's leaving. Who's it going to be? And they find themselves sitting by the sea with no answers. Therefore, they return to what they knew best: fishing. The task of being Jesus seems so daunting that they simply put the engine in reverse and went backwards. When Jesus returned to them, he certainly knew this, but had to remind them that they had learned how to fish differently with him. They learned how to tend sheep, meaning everybody. And they couldn't keep doing that in the sea. Nobody had to be Jesus, but they did have to keep following him, even though he would not be there. They did have to keep asking the question, if Jesus were here. Feed my sheep. Tend my lambs. Jesus had a job for them to do, and it wasn't going to be by the sea. They were going to have to hit the road running. We know that Jesus taught, by example, what it meant to tend and feed. Sometimes it looked a lot like feeding, but other times it looked very different. Jesus found himself tending and feeding the sheep the people everywhere he went. Around their tables, in their homes, in the synagogues, on the street. There wasn't a particular place or a particular time. There wasn't a particular kind of person. Simply tending sheep. And of course the disciples knew it wasn't very simple. But Jesus didn't put a lot of parameters on his instructions. Feed my sheep. We're here in the middle of our sermon series today. Last week talking about who we serve, Jesus. This week talking about why we serve. And next week, how. Why we serve is an important piece to what it is that we give our lives to as Christians. Why do we serve? Many of us adults have the habit, perhaps sometimes, of responding to a child who continues to ask why, with the response, because I said so, which sometimes is about the best answer. And frankly, as Christians, when we ask the question, why do we serve? Why do we give ourselves to other people and to our community? Why do we serve? A very simple answer could be, because Jesus said so. Get over it. Move on. Go. That's really not a bad answer, because he did. But in our passage today, a clear passage where Jesus says, go, feed my sheep, serve the world. He does it not by command, but by response. And that's important to remember. Jesus could have saved some words by simply saying to the disciples after breakfast, feed my sheep. But he didn't. Not only did he do it in a personal conversation with Simon Peter, but he did it in response to a question that he had for Simon Peter. Do you love me? Do you love me? Okay. Tend my sheep. Do you love me? Okay. Feed my lambs. Do you love me? Feed my sheep. The answer to why we serve is not because Jesus said so, but because we love